All right, so today we're going to be making my grandkids potholders by Jane Houseman. So what you're going to need to make this project a success is you need a 7.5 inch square of cotton batting and a 7.5 inch square of Insulbrite. And Insulbrite, as you see that shiny that's on there. It has a metal piece inside of this that helps keep heat from your hands. So these are the two things: 7.5 inch Insulbrite, 7.5 inch cotton batting. You want to use cotton batting because polyester, if you put something that was really, really hot on it, it could actually melt the polyester batting. So you want to make sure that the batting is a natural fiber, and most of us have cotton batting, so that's what this is. Then we need a 1 3/4 by 5 inch strip. This is going to be for our hanger. We need 3 pieces that are 8.5, and we're going to use two contrasting colors, okay? And you need 3 8.5 inch squares of your other favorite fabric. So you want to make sure that you've got a good contrast between the two fabrics. So what we're going to start off with, these are the fabrics that we need. So again, we need 3 8.5 inch squares of one fabric and 3 8.5 inch squares of another fabric. Then to make our project a little bit easier to work with, you want a walking foot for your sewing machine. Now, a walking foot does exactly what it says. Let me see if I can show you. The walking foot, actually, look, do you see that little part that's moving right there in the middle? On a walking foot, this bar is above the needle screw that you screw the needle in with. And as the needle goes up and down, those little pieces walk. The nice thing about this is that when you're working with bulky fabric, which we are going to be doing with our batting squares, you don't want your foot to ride along on top of the fabric because it'll actually wrinkle up your fabric. So a walking foot is your friend in this instance. You also might have a sewing machine that has a dual feed built in. And if you do, you want to connect that. But if you don't have either one of those things, don't worry about it. I'm going to show you how you can kind of make sure that your fabric and your batting stay smooth. So a walking foot is your friend. You want a nice thread. And the thing is, I'm using this really fun variegated thread. I just love this. And the thing is, it's red and green, which is exactly what my chili fabric looks like. But if I didn't have that, I would just use a regular thread. So we've got that. And then you want to wind a bobbin to match your thread. So there's my bobbin is wound, matching the thread that I'm going to be using. So these are necessities. Then I highly recommend the little mini clamps. I love those. They're called Wonder Clips or mini clamps, whatever you want to call them, and they come in different sizes. So I've got the small ones here so you can see those, but then I also have some of these longer ones. So let me push this so this makes it a little easier for you to see. And there we have it. So these are another friend. If you don't have Wonder Clips, Then you just need some really good pins. And if you'll notice, these guys are kind of long because we're going to be pinning through quite a few layers. And so a little short pin is going to kind of wad things up. So a longer pin is your friend. And if you just happen to have the 505 spray adhesive, that would be a very nice thing for you to have as well, because that way we can actually spray our layers of both our batting and our Insulbright, and then the front and back of our pot holder, we can actually spray adhesive these together with the 505, which is going to hold it a little bit better. So these are the things I think that will make your sewing of your pot holder that much easier. Okay, so the very first thing that we're going to sew is we are going to make our little tie here, our little, our little loop for hanging, not a tie, a loop. So what we're going to do is, remember this is a 1 3/4 by 5-inch piece. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fold it in half lengthwise with the wrong sides together. And I am going to just press a nice crease into that. Okay, let's get a little closer so you can see. All right, so there's my nice crease and you can see it there. So then I'm going to take that and I'm going to turn that raw edge on the long side here. I'm going to turn it and I'm going to put it right there up against that fold that I just pressed in. And I'm going to press that one, flip it around, and I'm going to do the same thing. We're just going to put that right into that center fold, and they should just touch. There we go. Just like that. And then last but not least, we're going to fold this in half again. So we just have a nice thin loop that we're going to be putting into our pot holder. So now what we're going to do is we are going to sew down both of our long sides so that we can seal this up. Okay, as you can see, I've got my little skinny strip under my walking foot. So here, this is my walking foot. And I am using my foot as a guide for where, as I'm sewing through here, because I want to make sure that my stitching all the way down the side of my little piece here is even. And your foot is a great place to use that. So what I'm going to do is, as you can see, I've got the edge of my little strip, and it is, whoops, right there at the edge of my foot, the inside toe of my foot. And I want to make sure that my needle is going to hit exactly on my fabric. I don't want to start by sewing off my fabric. Now, do you see, the other thing I want to point out to you is, do you see how this, my foot is walking? It's raising and lowering as I'm sewing down my little strip. Okay, clip that. And we're going to turn it around and we're going to do the other side as well. So let's raise our needle here. Oops, we got a little fuzz. Let's get it off of there. Right, and as you can see, my needle is actually going to hit right in the fabric as I, oh, it came unstitched. I mean, unthreaded. Hold on just a second. Okay, we're back in business. My needle is threaded. So here we go. And as you can see, I'm using the guide, the inside toe of my foot. Okay, now we're done with this. Right, so here is our little potholder loop that we're going to hang the potholder with. And as you can see, I've got stitching on both sides of my edges. So this is ready to go. So we're just going to set this aside. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to start putting our potholder together. All right, so now what we're going to do is we're going to take one of our 8.5-inch squares and we're going to turn it with the wrong side of our fabric up, just like that, okay? Then there's our Insulbrite and our cotton batting, and as you can see, they are stacked very nicely on top of each other. That's how we want them. So we're going to put that on there, and we want to make sure that we've got about a 1/2 inch all the way around our potholder. I need to slide this down just a hair. There we go. So we've got about a 1/2 inch around all of the potholder from our center. And then we're going to take our last piece and it is going to go right side up. Okay. So now if you wanted to, you could actually take your 505 adhesive spray. And this is how I would do this. I'm going to pull this back halfway. And we're going to just spray the batting. We're going to lay it back on there and make sure that your edges of your fabric are even. That looks pretty good. And so do you see how this is sticking now? Because the glue has definitely grabbed it up a little bit there. We're going to do this side as well. Okay. Then I'm just going to flip it over. And I'm going to do the same thing on this side. And the reason that I like to do this is because it keeps your fabric from moving a lot. And so we're going to, again, we're going to pull it back just a ways. And you don't want to just spray all over like this. You just really want to get your spray right on top of your batting or your Insulbrite, because this is a glue. And if you go hog wild crazy and spray it all over, then you're going to have glue all over everything. And you really don't want that. So here we go. We're just going to see how I'm just spraying right there along the edge of our, just smooth that out. And I will tell you, it's kind of cold to your touch. And then we're going to pull this side back and see it's stuck again. We're going to smooth that out. There we go. So that is how you use 505 spray. If you don't have 505 spray, that's okay. You can take some longer pins and you could actually pin through all those layers to just kind of hold them together. All right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to have a little bit of fun. We have to quilt these layers together, because when you're using a potholder, we know that things happen and they have to go into the wash. Well, we don't want these layers separating from one another and having a big lump, because sometimes batting will do that. Well, we don't want that to happen. So what we're going to do is we're going to sew. You can sew an X, you can sew a cross, you can do meandering stitches all over like this. Well, however you want to quilt that, that is totally your choice. But we do need to quilt these layers together. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do some fun meandering, and I will show you how we're going to do that. Okay, so I've got my little sandwich here, my little quilt sandwich, all up underneath my foot. And as you can see, I'm ready to start stitching. So I'm just going to come along and I'm just going to have a little bit of fun. And I'm going to make some curvy lines all along the diagonal center of my pot holder. I'm going to finish there in the corner. Okay, so there's one direction. So see, that's kind of fun. What do you think? I like that. So we're going to come and we're going to do it on this side as well. The really fun thing about doing this is there is no right or wrong. You're just having fun. And I think I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put one this way and I'm going to put one across this way. But do you see the nice thing about using your walking foot or a dual feed foot is, do you notice that my fabric is not bunching up as I'm sewing? And I think that's really great. That is why a walking foot is your friend anytime you're trying to do any kind of quilting, because it does help. If I did not have a walking foot on, then the foot would constantly be pushing. And you see how it kind of bunches that up? But a walking foot keeps that bunching away. Okay, so there's my fun quilting. And I don't know, I really like it. All right, so here is our little quilt sandwich. So now what we're going to do is we need to make our little woven pieces that are going to be the other part of our pot holder. So I'm going to set this aside for a minute. And we have two, oops, I've got four of them here. We have two of our one fabric, a beautiful bright green that goes with our chilies here. And we have two 8.5 squares of our chili fabric. Now, the really fun thing about the pot holders is you can either fold your squares in half diagonally like so and give them a press, or you can fold them in half this way. So for today, we're going to do them this way. We're going to do them into a long rectangle. So let me grab my iron. Here's my iron. Push that off to the side there. And we are going to just press a real nice crease into two of our chili fabrics. And two of our beautiful green fabrics. Pretty easy, yes. So there we have it. Two green and two of our chilies. All right, so once you've got your pieces pressed and your little tie made, and you've got your little quilt sandwich together, what you can do is you can actually stop and measure your square. Because if you've got any kind of ragged edges along the sides and you want to trim them up, this is a good time to trim. So I have my big ruler here, and I'm just going to lay that on here. And I want to remind you that when you are stitching a quilt sandwich together, the more quilting it has, it actually shrinks up. Because if you will remember, we started off with 8.5-inch squares, remember? Those were the size we were measuring. So when I lay my ruler on here now, mine has actually drawn up to 8.25. Don't get worked up about that. It's just the nature of how things work when you are quilting. So if you need to trim and you want to even up your little edges, no worries there. Go for it. So now what I'm going to do is this. I don't want to forget about my cute little hanger here. So I'm just going to take it and I'm going to fold it kind of in half like that. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a piece of, you can use painter's tape or whatever kind of tape that you might have handy. So I've got that folded in half like so. And I'm going to put that approximately right in the center of my pot holder here. And I'm going to match the two edges of my little hanger. And I have painter's tape. I always have painter's tape in my sewing room. So I'm going to use painter's tape. And I'm going to take that painter's tape and I'm not going to put it up here at the edge. I'm going to put it back here because I do not want to sew the painter's tape into my project. That is, I do not want that to happen. Okay, so we're just going to press him in there like so. So he's ready to go. Then what I'm going to do is I am going to take my squares, or my squares, these aren't squares, these are rectangles. I'm going to take my rectangle and I'm going to put one here. My next one is the opposite one, and it's going to go here at the top. And I want to make sure that I've got it lined up nicely along that edge. Here's my other green one. And remember, we're putting the raw edges out to the side and the fold is going into the center. Okay. So here is my other green one, and it is getting lined up along that edge. And I want you to notice that it is touching the guy here in the center. Okay. And then last but not least, here is our other rectangle. And we're going to put it right here. And again, I want to make sure that it is touching. But I don't want him to be on the top here. So I'm going to hold my hand here. And I'm going to fold this back. And I'm going to fold this guy back. And he's going to come right down here. And do you notice he is lined up beautifully right with his friend that is there. All right, so we've taped our little hanger in place. It's not going to go anywhere. And now we're going to start our weaving. So the first one is going to go lined up those edges. Here's our second rectangle, and it's going across the top. And again, we are lining it up across that top space. Here comes our next green one, and he's again lined up across the top, down the side here. But I want you to notice that he is just touching the same color that is here. Okay. And the last one that we have is this guy right here. So now we want to make sure that all of the edges that are here are the folded edges. The raw edges go to the outside of our square. And I want to make sure that I am touching here. But I don't want to have a big square like this because it's not woven. So what I'm going to do is I'm holding my hand here. I'm going to fold this back over. I'm going to lift up this end of my green rectangle and it's going to go up here. I'm going to lay this guy back down on top of that. And this one is going to come back where it needs to. So this is how we're going to weave those together. Let me show you one more time. So fold in the center. There's the first one, the second one, the third one. Remember, they're touching here in the center. And our last one. Hold your hand here, flip this back, lift this guy up, lay him back down. And you know you've got it right when you've got your fabrics opposite of one another. And you can say, okay, I'm good. Now, this is where you can either use your big pins where you can pin through all those layers like so, because you really don't want these to shift on you. You really want them to just stay in place. But I have to tell you, this is why I like the Wonder Clips, because I can actually clip these in place. And I always want to clip where they come together here. He's going to get a little clip there. Might as well do all the little pieces here. I have to say, I really do like these big clips because they reach all the way across and they really hold everything together very nicely. And the other thing I like about using the Wonder Clips is if you notice that it's not creating like a little pucker where they are put in there. So let's turn this over and check how we're doing. All right, so if you will notice, we're slightly smaller on this side than we are on the other side. So my recommendation is this. I'm going to just flip these over and I'm going to sew from this side, because this way I can see exactly where my pot holder parts are. If I wanted to, I could go back and I could trim off these pieces. The other reason you want to check this is you want to make sure that you don't have any like puckers over on the sides where the pot holder backing is gripping. Well, I'm going to switch him out for a long one right here. There we go. So now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to sew a 1/2 inch seam allowance all the way around my square. And the reason that I'm doing it from the top is I want to be able to see where that edge is, because that is what I'm going to use as my guide. So that's going to be our next step. All right, so now we're just going to, if you can see, I've got my foot in there. And don't start at the point when you start sewing something like this. Start like in the center or on the side there. All right, so here we go. And you just want to sew right along the edge where you can feel the batting and insole bright. And just pull your clips out as you sew along. Turn. See, and I can feel right there where I'm at. That's where I can feel that batting right there. You can almost run your finger right along there. Just be careful though. Don't let the machine sew your finger. That'd be horrible. But you can kind of just feel that edge on there. Turn. You're just going to sew right into the stitching that's already there. All right, so there we have it. We have stitched all the way around our little pot holder. And I want to turn it over and make sure everything is nice and smooth on this side, that we didn't have anything that kind of moved or caused any kind of problems. So now what we're going to do is we're going to trim this up because we've got a lot of bulky stuff here on the sides and it really doesn't need to be there. So we're going to get rid of that right now. Okay, so now I want to trim this up so we don't have all this excess. And I also want to trim the corners so that we have a nice point when we turn our project out. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to trim across that point. Now you don't want to hit the threads because then you're going to have a hole, but you want to come back about 1/8 of an inch and you're going to whack that corner off just like that. And we're going to do that to all 4 corners. There's that one. All right, so as you can see, I've got my corner, it's right there, and I've got about 1/8 of an inch of fabric between those corners. So then the next thing I'm going to do is, see how we've got that raggedy edges out there? I don't like that. So we're just going to take our ruler, our rotary ruler, and we're going to lay it on there. And I'm taking the 1/4 inch mark, and I'm going to cut off everything outside of that. That aside. And I'm going to do that on all 4 sides. Up there, dip spot there. We're cutting through a lot of layers, so be sure and make sure you've cut through all of them. If you don't have a rotary cutter, then all you have to do is you're just going to get your scissors And you're just going to trim that away, and about 1/4 of an inch. Just like so. And there we have it. It looks nice. It's all trimmed up, and we're ready to go to the next section. All right, so here is our cute little pot holder, all trimmed up and ready to turn. So what we're going to do now is, we don't want these raw edges on the outside of our little pot holder. So now we're going to turn it right side out. So we're just going to take our fingers and we're going to stick them down in this little hole here, just like so. See how I can get my thumbs in there? And we're just going to turn our pot holder right side out. Just like so. Oh, see, there's our tie, our tab to hold to our little hanging tab. And so, well, that doesn't look so great, does it? But it's not hard to find something that you can reach in there, and you want to poke right along your seam allowance. Okay, we can do that. This is a point turner that I'm using. You can use a dull pencil, just anything that's going to allow you to take that and push those points out. And then see, and I like to run my little point turner right along the edge of the seam. You see, we're just going to, and it takes a little bit of work to get this to pop out. Here's my last corner. All right, there we go. Now what I'm going to do is, see, there's my little hanger. I'm going to grab my ironing board, my little ironing mat again. I have a little stray thread there, so we're going to cut that off. If there's a point that I don't like how it looks, then I can just stop and just see if I can work it out. And if I can't, well, it's okay. It's just a pot holder. But this is a good way to practice your stitching. And this is a really great project for kids to make as well, because it gets them familiar with your machine and sewing straight lines. All right, so I've worked real hard at getting my seam allowances there along the side, looking good. And now I'm just going to take my iron. Whoops, don't do that. And I'm going to just press all along that seam allowance. And now that it's pressed, here is my cute little pot holder with my fancy stitching on the back. Super easy to make. You can use any fabric that you have in your stash, or go and get you some fat quarters, and you can make some really great hostess gifts for the holidays, or the kiddos can make really great gifts for their favorite folks. So I hope you all enjoy this project.